Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar presentation, From Dev to DevSec, How to Transform Developers into Security Rockstars, brought to you by WhiteSource. I would like to introduce you to our presenters. First, Stefania Chaplin. Stefania is a MIA's solution architect at Secure Code Warrior. Her experience within cybersecurity, DevSecOps, and OSS governance means she's helped countless customers understand and implement security throughout their SDLC. As a Python developer at heart, Stefania is always itching to improve efficiency wherever she goes by writing scripts to automate processes. Most recently, Stefania has been speaking at many virtual events on publications such as DZone and on the Secure Code Warrior Bright Talk. And our second presenter today is Maya Sharon. Maya is a training and knowledge manager at WhiteSource. Maya has extensive experience of over 15 years as a training specialist in the high-tech industry. She worked for various companies as a product training manager, e-learning leader, and learning platforms manager. Maya is excited about cutting-edge learning technologies and knowledge transference strategies. And now I'd like to pass it over to them for the presentation.
Thank you for the introduction. So the agenda for today, I'm going to talk a little bit about the ancient history of software creation, DevSecOps, and then transforming Dev to DevSec, and then pass over to Maya for top training programs to master DevSec, and finally Q&A. So the ancient history of software creation. I'm going to go back a bit to 1986. W. Edward Deming, and those may know him from his work with the car industry. So he did a lot of work with the Japanese car industry, like Toyota. And what he realized is when it comes to cars, and also when it comes to software, it's very much important what parts you put in. So, for example, quality is everyone's responsibility. It's not just in software terms, it's not just developers, it's not just security, it is everyone's, because you want to have the best quality products. And in modern day terms, obviously referring to security. So part of the problem, development and security work in silos. They even use different languages. So for example, developers talk about constructors, they talk about frameworks, while security will talk about CWEs and talk about CSRF, for example. So it's about breaking down those silos or getting each part to understand each other's worlds. And part of the problem, the old bugs keep performing the same, performing new tricks. Or what it means is SQL injection has been around about 20 years, and the solution for SQL injection, parameterized queries, has also been around 20 years. So really, we need to get a bit smarter and start thinking about, these repetitive behaviors, these vulnerabilities, can they be remedied, or how? Or ideally, let's not start introducing them to the environment to begin with. So we can't continue down this path. It is not sustainable and it does not scale. There are hundreds of billions of lines of code produced on average. We've got 0-day cyber attacks, which are estimated to reach 1 per day next year. And the demand for security personnel far outweighs supply, and this will only get worse. So looking at methodologies and how that's moved. A long time ago, well, not that long, but we used to have Waterfall, and to get from one stage to another, there would be a firm handover. And the thing about a waterfall, like with water, it doesn't really go up. So what you would find is that by the time something had reached implementation or testing, it was probably out of date. And you think, for example, I say back in the old days, but I remember when I was younger and you had Windows 95, then Windows 98. Now we've evolved to Windows 365. So it's kind of waterfall, took time, but things could get out of date. Then we moved to Agile, where it's much, Agile and all these methodologies is really about culture. So that was to do with sprints. So you would review, test, build, design, plan. So like a mini waterfall. And these sprints usually last between 2 to 4 weeks. And what this means is you can pivot. So you can try something. Let's do a web page, or let's design a portion of a database. And then, does it work? Do people like it? What's the feedback? And move on to the next one. So it's working a lot smarter, and you don't end up doing rework, or hopefully getting things wrong. If you do get them wrong, you can obviously pivot and fix. And then DevOps. Hopefully, I'm sure everyone has read the Phoenix Project. If you haven't, you should. It's great, and it's written in a very readable way. It's not just a DevOps textbook. But with DevOps, it was the real combination of the developer and the development framework, and then ops, and how ops operate, and really getting those two environments seamless and working together to produce software, because you need both pieces, development to make, and then ops to maintain and deploy, etc. But what about security? So I know this picture's done the rounds quite a lot across in the last few years, but the problem with DevOps is it's great, it's fast, it's efficient, in inverted commas, but what happens when you have a vulnerability? It's great to automate, but you need to automate high quality. So then comes DevSecOps, and it's not about putting sec in the middle, it's about putting sec everywhere. So you've got threat modeling, code reviews, software composition analysis, threat intelligence, monitor, detecting, etc. So it's having it everywhere. And then you get security nirvana. So how is DevSecOps changing the game? And when we look, and this was some very interesting research done about the percentage of defects introduced. And this kind of makes sense, because development is where developers code. That's where they write these new features, new applications, and unfortunately, that's where they're introducing vulnerabilities. And it's not necessarily the developer's fault. It can be literally as much as they don't know any better. Like, I used to be a developer, and I'll be honest, I have copied and pasted from Stack Overflow. I'm pretty sure every developer has. So unfortunately, defects can be introduced at this point. So what we want to do is we want to secure the software development lifecycle. And really, where we had DevOps before, even before DevOps, so before we start planning, let's train and assess. So it's almost shifting so far left that we're almost in developer brain. So instead of shifting left, starting left. And then you can obviously have, through security and testing throughout, but it is, starting left. And then, to be fair, bugs are cheapest when you start left, because if you look at, as you go through software development process, the cost to fix security bugs, you've obviously got different testing tools. Wouldn't it be great if we could just fix a bug, either in the IDE or maybe even before it existed? Groundbreaking. What about if we taught developers about what SQL injection is, so they don't concatenate their variables and they use parameterized queries instead? Sometimes the difference between secure and not secure is as easy as input validation or sanitization, or all the things that make sense, and you hear about it and you're like, oh yeah, definitely. But then when it comes to the development, why don't we teach developers the right way, the secure way to do this? And it's all about culture. So changing culture is key, because you want to make security fun. You want it to be gamified. You want it to be a positive. You want security to be, that you don't want it to be a stick being like, your build has failed, go refix. You really want to change the thinking to change the behavior, and the behavior will change the thinking. So ultimately, it is everyone's responsibility, and we can all resolve security issues together. So why security-aware developers are the future? I've seen different versions of this statistic. What it's saying is 100 developers to 1 security expert. I've been in companies in Europe where the number is 300 to 1. So anyone with under 100 to 1, you're doing great, but literally it's not it's not scalable having 1 security person for hundreds of developers. So enter security champions, and what you'll find is developers are either really, well, you can find them, some are really passionate, or paranoid about security, depending how you spin it. And it's always good to identify these people because they are normally going to champion security. They're going to be your advocates. They're going to be, on the front line, encouraging good behaviors, keeping an eye on things and making sure that you do not have vulnerable software, you don't get hacked. And you can also incentivize this into career development, etc. But it's always good to identify these. And a lot of companies do have security champions, but why stop there? Why don't we empower all developers? Imagine if every developer could be a security-minded, security-aware, secure coding professional, the dream. So making the move from dev to DevSec, transform with a tactical guide. So like I keep saying, security is a shared responsibility. The problem we've had, devs point security, security points at dev, C-suite point everywhere. But it really is everyone's responsibility. And you need to make sure that, you have the right tools. Security might want to monitor, development need education, and kind of everything in between. You want to nurture a highly supportive environment. So instead of, chastising people for, having security vulnerabilities, use it as an opportunity to re-educate, keep it fun, keep it lively, have kind of KPIs and metrics that support education, and, doing, oh, wow, your app didn't fail any builds in your, white source report. Oh, wow, you can finish at 4 o'clock on a Friday. So, keeping it supportive. And the best DevSecOps teams train constantly and they improve their skills as they work. And this is where I will pass on to Maya, who will explain it a lot better.
Thank you, Stefania, for the introduction. I'm going to talk about top training programs that can help you master DevSec. As Stefania mentioned, DevSec strategies today are shifting left. Developers today solve security issues throughout the full development lifecycle and need to be educated about security trends and tools. Unfortunately, most companies train their employees on DevSec once or twice a year and expect them to remember each and everything. Sadly, the human brain does not work this way. As you can see on the screen, in this following part, I would like to present 4 learning trends that can help you gain knowledge on security trends and tools in order to automate security and let you focus on development. So, the first one, in order to close gaps in knowledge, training programs should include interactive training methods that will help developers be engaged and play the part in the DevSecOps process. As Benjamin Franklin said, tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me and I learn. If you want to attract and withhold the modern learner's attention, it is pivotal to use active learning methods. One of the known methods is data-driven problem solving. Problem-solving training can include troubleshooting, customer use cases, case studies, and hands-on installations. Moving to the next trend, the DevSec industry is a fast-moving industry due to the fact that every day dozens of vulnerabilities, code, or cyber attacks are being generated. If organizations want to keep their code safe, they must make sure that the developers are up to date on the latest dev security tools, trends, and measures. This can be rather difficult with traditional training methods like instructor-led training or frontal training. This is where machine learning can help. By using machine learning, the system can recommend specific learning units based on a security issue or detected vulnerability that appears during the development lifecycle. By doing so, developers get information on specific security challenges in their code just in time and on demand. The third trend concerns tasty nuggets. Learners need to be fed small pieces of information, what we call learning nuggets or micro-learner, as you can see in the title, micro-learning. So they can remember small units of knowledge. A learning nugget is a small learning unit that takes up to 15 minutes learning time. This is exactly why microlearning is so effective in organizations and is being implemented in many companies. Microlearning modules can also be used as just-in-time training to quickly learn what to do in case of a security breach. In addition, as you probably know, updating traditional training materials takes a lot of time. With microlearning modules, it's very easy to update materials. And just to clarify, if we talk about the authoring tool is the platform which creates the digital content. So it's very easy to use authoring tools in order to prepare short learning units. So after we discussed microlearning, let's look at the last trend I want to present. And this trend is based on creation of learning program. So why wait for the time when traditional training will take place? You could easily curate your own content, focusing on what's important for you. And this way, you are actually creating on-demand learning, where you learn about DevSec when it makes sense for you. By curating the content you need, you can quickly get back to coding and turn your learning experience into a short, interesting, and targeted process. Creating your own training program will help you stay up to date with any new development in the cybersecurity industry. Now, let us see the resources for self-curation, which includes self-paced online training that helps developers gain awareness of security trends and tools. So, first, I would like to differentiate, as you can see here, between training programs that are free and training programs that are paid. So if we look at the first example, we can see an example for cybersecurity within IT and ICS domains course. And this course is offered free by CISA, which is the nation's risk advisor, which actually works today against threats and is collaborating to build more secure and resilient infrastructure for the future. So here you can see an example of the course abstract, and you can just enroll for free. The second example concerns OSAP Top 10 Security Risks and Vulnerabilities. So what is OSAP? OSAP stands for the Open Web Application Security Project. In this case, we're talking about open source. And actually, it's an online community that produces articles, methodologies, documentation, tools, and much more. So what is the OSAP Top 10? It is the list of the 10 most common application vulnerabilities. It shows risks, impacts, and also countermeasures. So you can see here for the year 2020, what are the top 10 OSAP vulnerabilities? Injection, broken authentications, and so forth. This is really helpful. You have a lot of examples here, and you can just review this article and learn a lot about top 10 vulnerabilities. So again, this is also for free. Another example is Cybery. Cybery is a platform which is half free. You have to register to an account, and you can see lots of interesting courses. In this case, I want to show an example of fundamentals of cybersecurity architecture. And once you registered, you can see that you get introduction for free. If you want to see the other modules, then you have to pay. But the introductions here are very good, and it's very useful. If I'm going back to the main page, so you can see that if I look at the category DevSecOps, then I can see interesting courses here, like this one, Introduction to IT and Cybersecurity, Security Onion, and much more, Cybersec architecture, and so forth. So take a look at Cybery. Another source is Sun Cyber ACES online tutorials. Now here you can see tutorials that are streaming, and you can see, for example, if I open the first one by the Module 1 Introduction to Operating Systems, specifically now not on security, but later on you can see the courses. So these are actually videos that you can learn. This is for your own self-paced online training. And down here you can see also all the topics that are relevant to you. This is also very helpful. So you can use that. Another example I want to show is from GitHub. GitHub, as you know, is a repository of open source projects. So I just clicked the open source guide in GitHub, and here you can find guides for open source security. For example, if I scroll down, you can see also best practices. You can see the legal side of open source, the open source matrix, and actually you can learn a lot from these guides and look in GitHub and find interesting resources. Now, until now, we've seen all things that are free. If we're going to talk about paid programs, so you probably know Udemy. We also have Coursera, where you have wonderful training programs on security, also FutureLearn. So I'm not going to get into this because you can look for it independently, but definitely use the free options that I've showed here. So we talked about self-paced online training, about choosing free or paid training program, and how to build awareness to security trends and tools. So to summarize, we can say that the beautiful thing about learning is that nobody can take it away from you. So developers should be given frequent security training that is relevant to their job and up to date. Also, the time and attention for training should be allocated and planned as part of the developer's daily routine. And finally, training evaluation should be incorporated so it can boost motivation and build a positive security culture and experience. So now we've reached the Q&A part. We would be happy to answer your questions. We're here for you, so if there are any questions from the audience, please ask.
Okay, thank you both, Stefania and Maya, for a wonderful presentation. And with that, I would like to get started first with a question for Stefania. Stefania, someone is wondering, how do you encourage collaboration within a team?
Sure. So I think when you're encouraging collaboration, and this can be within a work team, like cross-functional, even, in a personal or family team, it's all about having, a shared vision and appreciating that you're working together. So you don't want security and developers to be enemies. You want people to speak the same language. You want them to have a common shared goal, let's not get hacked. And you can use this through a number of things. So language is quite important. Like I mentioned before, developers talk about frameworks whilst security talk about cross-site request forgeries. So it's really important to have a joint language and a joint goal, and then collaborate together. And very much carrot and stick. You don't really want to have too much stick. You want to, encourage communication and this kind of shared vision to have collaboration.
Perfect, thank you. And my second question is for Maya. If I find a learning platform, how can I evaluate it and say if it's good for learning about security trends and software development lifecycle?
Okay, sure. So the way to examine this is with three criteria. So the first one is the date the information was published. So once you encounter a platform like this, first you should check the date, because there are many courses and learning units that are rather old, let's say from 2012 or 2018. So the security world is changing, and we need to be updated all the time. So first, check the date. The second thing is, who is the author? So you should check if it's a vendor of some kind of security tool, or maybe an academic source, or maybe it is a thought leader in the industry. So I would recommend that the best way to choose this learning unit is to see if it is a thought leader in the industry that provides this information. The third criterion is the content itself. So if you're not familiar with the security market, so make sure that the course is focused on what you need. That is to say, there is a difference between learning about hackers, malicious code. There is a difference between open source security or code security. There are differences between learning on tools that are part of the CI/CD pipeline and tools you find in GitHub. So there are many differences. So just make sure that you're focused on what's important for you. So we talked about the first and the second, and the third one, as I said, is the content itself. So I hope this answers the question.
Yes, I believe it absolutely did. Another question for the audience, for either of you, is there any code analysis tool with AI that you recommend?
Okay, so I can answer this. There are several options, actually, AI and machine learning. These are the new technologies. And in terms of security, there are some vendors who are working on these technologies. I can say that from the Whitesource side, so we're working on it. But as for other tools, this is something to be examined in the future.
Yeah, what I would just say to add to that is, in terms of tools at the moment, I don't think anyone's bad just yet, but having worked in the industry, spoken to different, professionals, whether it's kind of at meetups or, in business meetings, that's where the market is heading, but I don't think anyone's nailed it quite yet. But I know for a lot of professionals, including myself, AI, machine learning, it's very, very interesting. So I think that's definitely going to be a trend maybe in the next 5 years. But right now, I can't put my finger on, who's going to nail it first.
Exactly.
Very interesting.
I think the same.
Another audience member is wondering, is there any DevSec tool available online where they can practice secure coding?
Sure. So I'll take that. So I work for a company called Secure Code Warrior, and it's kind of written by developers for developers with security in mind. So it's meant to be gamified security training. I'm an ex-developer, and I know that in general we tend to be kinesthetic. We're competitive. We like learning by doing. Nearly everyone I know plays video games. So what we try to do is apply that to security lessons and learning. So focusing on OWASP or CWE, what it means is, we have a website trial. You can literally go on securecodewarrior.com, have a trial for a few weeks, play around, get your colleagues or get your friends to try it, no questions or commitments. But it's a really good intro. And what we find, especially that we get, is people that might not know about security, and especially they might not want to admit it, they actually get a lot of value from the tool because there's a whole support network. So if you don't know what CSRF stands for, it's okay. We'll tell you. No judgment here.
That's very helpful. Thank you. Another question from the audience is there a preference towards certificates or degrees in the security industry?
I don't mind taking this one. Obviously, Mike can add if I've missed anything. I think what level you're going. If you're very junior and you're thinking about university, computer science is usually a good place to start. But you don't have to do that. But if you're looking a bit later, I think there's a lot of cybersecurity degrees you can do. I know the ISSP is quite a famous one. I personally am doing one on ethical hacking. There's kind of a couple around, but I might pass over to Maya in case she has any other additional.
Okay, yes. So actually, there is a difference between degree and certificate. So you can find platforms that provide you a certificate, whether it's in Udemy or Coursera. You also have Sun, and there are some platforms that provide that. So what you could do is just look online and follow the links that suggest these are certificates. I think that in general, the learning industry is going towards certificate-based training programs and less degrees because we're more focused on skills and skills that are relevant for the job market today. So I think a certificate is a very good way to learn. You can also shorten your progress, your time that you put in the effort at the time and the effort that you put in the training, and you can make it shorter and focus on what you need for your job.
That was very helpful, Maya. Thank you. And it appears that we have one more question at the time being, and that question is, what sort of roles are available as security developers?
Oh, so I would say, being someone who's moved around quite a lot in my career so far, I'm not going to say the sky's the limit, but being a security-aware developer or having an interest, a passion, or a paranoia, however you want to word it, it makes it really easy to move around within the kind of, whether it's the application security, network security, because security is a skill that is going to be sought after because the world is going to go more technical. Obviously there are going to be bad actors. It's good to be on the good side. That's personally my driver for working in cybersecurity because I know I'm going to be employable forever. So I'd kind of more ask yourself, whoever the question that person is asking, what's important to you? Like, do you like developing? Because then you could go that way. Do you like to have more of a architectural role, or do you like to be more customer facing? Do you like to translate security ideas between the security silo and the developer silo? So I think having an interest in passion security will really set you up, and it's just a case of maybe looking a bit more inward and figuring out what's important to you, and then driving it that way. I don't know if that actually helps because I didn't really answer the question, but hopefully it does.
I thought it was very helpful. So thank you for that. And we have one last question, which I think is a good one to end on today. And I think both of you could probably speak to this. And that question is, where do you see the future of this industry going?
Oh, so it's a question I ask myself all the time because I'm like, hey, I want to stay employable and relevant. For me, I think cybersecurity in general is if you're looking at cybersecurity as a whole topic, that is going to be very important. And the attack vectors, they may change. For example, maybe 10 years ago, it was all about WAF and network security. And then, that got all of a sudden then next, application security, that became the lowest hanging fruit. And then, in the last few years, there's been loads of like S3 buckets that weren't protected. So there's loads of cloud security. That's become the next thing. So I think in terms of, what is coming next within cybersecurity, I don't know, potentially looking at where behavior is. For example, there's a real growth towards microservices at the moment. So that could be the next. If you think about where the lowest apple is for the hackers, that's usually where the next big thing in cybersecurity is going to be. So if you see a vulnerability, chances are then that might be a growth area if there is a niche in the market.
So I'd like to follow Stefania on this question. I definitely agree that the future is going there. I think that cybersecurity is a huge trend and it's not going to disappear. It's here to stay. You can also see that during the Corona times where the world globally is using, of course, all the web and the computer-based tools. So we're all hooked. And once we're hooked to technology, then the potential for attackers and for vulnerabilities to happen, the potential is huge. So I believe this industry and market will definitely grow in terms of job offerings. I think there will be also multiple options, whether it will be regarding also AI and machine learning in cybersecurity, and different roles in this amazing field. And hopefully the hackers, of course, the hackers will also present new challenges, but hopefully the industry will manage to go one step ahead and prevent all the vulnerabilities and all the malicious things that are going on.
Those were both very knowledgeable predictions and wonderful answers. And if there are no more questions, I would like to thank both Stefania and Maya for a great presentation. I would also like to thank WhiteSource for providing the audience with a great webinar. Lastly, thank you to everyone who attended today. We hope you learned something new that will help you in your developer career. Thank you, and I hope you're safe out there.